Hi, everybody. We are live again. Sorry for the technical issue we just experienced. Join to this link and continue the fascinating conversation with Tanja Schomann and Brandon Evans. Tanja is from PsyX, Brandon is from 1Heart, and we're really tackling major issues related to the psychedelic and business. So enjoy the conversation. We're presenting a beautiful white paper they're working on. So Tanja, you go. Please continue from the last section of our conversation.
So there was a comment from Nino talking about whether we understand that psychedelics or entheogens are sacred medicines and spiritual. I can't see the comment right now anymore, but essentially saying that psychedelics are not a business. And I just wanted to speak to that because it was linked to some things we were saying just a few minutes ago, that I think neither 1Heart nor PsyX has that perspective of wanting to turn psychedelics into this big cash cow business model. I think for us, like, the real motivation is really that work with leaders to get to the results that we've mentioned, to really because we know that these people have such an impact in the world, and if they get inspiration from the psychedelic journeys to also have a positive impact on society at large. And now I do think that it's very important to keep in mind that those plants are most closely held by shamans and indigenous communities, and that they have the most profound knowledge of it. And then there's also the Western scientific level, where there's also more knowledge coming out. And I think it's really to have a very integrative understanding of this, and to really hold a container in which we're not ignoring that, and where we also build our business models on the same principles.
Yeah, thank you very much for referring to Nino's point. It's actually an important point, because we hear on our side from the Central America and South America the voice of, hey, this is not a business. This is actually a sacrament. This is sacred. This is a tradition. This is a lineage. And I think it's important for the community to find good answers and good ways to respect that. So we have Tanja Stone asking, and she asked also in the other stream, is how you can get more involved. Tanja, I think you are getting involved by being here on the show, and also look out for all the groups out there on social media. There is many groups in the psychedelic and entheogenic field where you can get involved by being part of the conversation, and then you slowly but surely will get an idea of what you can do and how you can contribute to the conversation and to the future of this movement, or this third wave of psychedelics. And we have William Drake saying all plant medicine should be free. We are behind you. William, thank you so much, man. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to move a little bit forward, and I have a question for you. And in the white paper, will there be a reference to indigenous models of living? Will there be reference to how indigenous communities have handled their relationship with nature and with each other over time? Because I think it's an interesting place where we can learn from. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So one section where that's going to be touched on is where we talk about ways how this kind of psychedelic thinking is already happening, and also in relation to the regenerative model that I mentioned earlier, because regenerative practices and regenerative design, regenerative development is drawing a lot of inspiration from how indigenous basically set up their villages, interact with nature. So that's a concrete example where we're talking about the role of indigenous ways of approaching life and relationship with nature is going to be included in the white paper.
Okay, great. Brandon, how you guys in 1Heart bring that voice or that attitude to your experiences that you create for business leaders?
Well, obviously working with different medicine teams that bring the medicine and are able to, kind of bring their perspective and their training to to our journeys themselves. The locations we go to, we try to be pretty nestled in nature and allow people to really get outside. Definitely the city and experience the jungle and experience nature. On the retreats itself, there's a lot of. I think one of the great things about these medicines is also just the learning of ceremony and just the use of ceremony, which we can use for so many things in our lives, and just knowing that whether it's blessing your food or taking time to just give gratitude. There's so many things that we can do that stop us in our repetitive patterns and allow us to, really understand the ceremony that is life. And so, certainly there's a lot that we do around that. And then, as an organization, we always have a sacred reciprocity program. So giving back to directly to communities that are supporting, the Amazon, growing these medicines, doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, and making sure that we're giving back, and that the people that are coming on these retreats are well informed that of that.
Yeah, it's interesting that I personally interacted with at least 3 people that came out of your programs directly, people that have been very successful in the corporate world, and coming out of your programs, many quite often say, hey, okay, what do I do? How can I contribute? How can I help this this sensation of change that we also need? So definitely part of my interaction. Tanja, for you, and as I understand, you have more experience with the African tradition, right?
Yeah.
What do you see in their way of life that we can bring in and learn from as we create these businesses? What are the key gems, so diamonds you can share with us?
Maybe also to just add another word on how PsyX is also engaging with indigenous. Quickly before I answer that question, so it's also a lot about giving voice. So one of the things that I do, or that we do, is we have a podcast, and the current podcast, so we've only put 3 episodes out so far, but there's also podcast episodes coming up with indigenous leaders. So it's also to create a container where all voices are represented. So that's one aspect. And also we had some discussions for research grant applications, and really involving indigenous also in the study design, to really figure out different cosmologies and ways of even conceptualizing knowledge and knowledge generation, and how can that be done differently when indigenous get involved in adding their worldview to study design. So that's also something we're playing with, but that's still kind of in the making. And then regarding my experience with the African traditions and what can be learned from them, it's an interesting question. So the background that I have was that I did my Bwiti initiation in Gabon. So Bwiti is the tradition that is using Iboga. And I mean, one thing to say is that they're just they're pretty tough, and they are not. I always say that Iboga, the spirit of Iboga, reminds me a lot of people like Greta Thunberg, or what's his name again? Edward Snowden. These people who just say things that are actually very simple and straight, but so no bullshit. And I think that's really what I've learned through the Bwiti tradition, that sometimes you just got to be damn straight, and not this story and that story, just cut straight through it. And I think that's definitely a lesson that a lot of business leaders can learn.
That's
for sure.
That's a good one. All right, I'm going to Tim. Love the respect for the indigenous, the wisdom holders. Thank you so much, Tim. Dear brother, Tim has been working on a lot of music recently, and is releasing it. So watch for Tim's music coming up online. Thank you so much, Tim. So I want to look into the future a little bit, yeah. And when you create a white paper and you create this beautiful harmony of ideas and thoughts and introspection, you have an opportunity to kind of frame future projects. And I'm sure you're going to integrate the white paper into PsyX and into 1Heart. What's the impact that you want to have, or that you envision having, on the people that come to 1Heart retreats, or on the organizations that collaborate with PsyX on consulting or system change? What can be done?
In relation to the white paper, or
in relation to the white paper, and in relation to what you guys are doing in your operations? Like, what are you dreaming of? And in context of business, right?
Yeah, our mission is to elevate powerful leaders so that they go out and create, companies that positively impact our world. So I think with every retreat we do, we see people come out with more awarenesses, higher levels of consciousness. Obviously, as we know, there's still a lot of work to be done with what they do with that and how they implement that in their lives. But I think, on a day-to-day basis, we're looking at, what happens when people running companies, people leading others, people in these roles in society continue to elevate, get on a path of growth. And obviously not just ayahuasca, not just plant medicine, but, most of them tend to have better eating habits and, treat their spouses better and their employees, and they go back and they get more involved in yoga and meditation or whatever the case may be. So how do we kind of allow, leaders and people with oversized impacts in the world, to continually grow in that way? And I think with regards to the white paper, it's a similar mission, but I think really shedding some more light, as Tanja mentioned. A lot of the conversation is around individual healing, which is certainly important, and we can't heal others, and we can't, do these things if we're not healing ourselves. But I think there is a large impact that we're seeing in what happens to these organizations. I mean, we have a guy that's come on our retreat that runs he's a big real estate guy, and he teaches others, coaches others. He has a conference with like 10,000 people that was always like hardcore, business, how to make money. And he introduced breath work and meditation and had people crying, and like just the stuff he puts out on Instagram now is amazing. And so those types of stories, the ripple effect, how do we keep, how do we educate the leaders that are, and obviously as it gets into governments, and, imagine our first president that hopefully someday that has done ayahuasca or been to Burning Man or whatever the case may be. That will hopefully be a changing moment in the world. So just continuing to make the medicine available and accessible, and for those people.
Great. Yeah. Amazing. Tanja, you wanna dream a little bit? You wanna envision a little bit?
Yeah.
Where's PsyX and how PsyX is going?
Yeah, so first on the white paper, I think I fully agree with Brandon. I think that one is all about creating narratives, spreading the message, also maybe being a basis for newspapers to write about these topics and to get the message more out, and to really destigmatize plant medicine in yet a different way. Because, what you guys were doing was all about personal stories of healing, and I think this is destigmatization in relation to leadership and the impact in society. And with regards to PsyX, I think our mission is really to be to really have this systemic perspective on society and the impact that psychoactive technologies can have. So if you really think about any sector that is there, anything from oil and gas to the educational sector to, whatever, I think every sector can potentially be really changed if people had a more psychoactive state of consciousness, and state and stage, right? Like to in the moment just take different decisions and act differently, and facilitate conflicts through psychoactivated states, and to rethink about what would the world look like where in any sector the key people would be in a different state of mind when they were taking the important decisions. I think that's really quite at the core of what we're doing.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for the two of you. I'm going to end up, and it's an invitation. I'd like to see if you're willing to make a prediction of how far are we from that future. from where we can actually be more open, act in the West with these ideas? Is it 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, according to your vision? Where are we on the road for having society being truly open to this? Like as people are open now to yoga and meditation and yoga studios everywhere, and you can practice Qigong in Vienna.
Yeah. Well, I think like our own personal journeys, I mean, it's a journey. So we're always moving along, at some rate. And sometimes it looks like we're moving forward. Sometimes it looks like we're moving backwards. But, I definitely see it moving. Obviously, you see stuff with the legalization and or decriminalizations that are happening all over the world. You see things with, more the type of people that we are having on 1Heart and seeing a lot of, what's happening. Obviously, Burning Man is bringing, people in. You see a lot of different trends and things happening. I think the good news is like any trend, things are exponential. So it's always hard to predict, and it always looks like it's happening slower than it probably will happen. And I think this is no different. I think it's certainly exponential. We have about 90% of the people that come on a retreat are through referrals. So, it's each person that comes is telling, is affecting other people. And, they're seeing how these people are changed in their lives, either, personal friends or with people that are Instagram influencers. So as that continues to happen, I think the exponential nature of that is huge. And then there will be some massive breaking points. Like I mentioned, if there's a president that's done these, or some huge, you have some big, I think Tim Ferriss said something along the lines of every billionaire he knows has done psychedelics. When you start to hear those people come out more about it, when you start to, really experience that, or see how, companies maybe got built because of this, or have different values because of this. I think those will be big turning points as well that will continue to accelerate things.
Thank you very much. Timeline.
What is time? What is time?
Tanja.
Yeah, actually, there was one thing that Brandon mentioned that reminded me of something, and that aspect that there are already so many leaders who are working with psychedelics, but they're not talking about it because of the stigma. So I think one of the other things that PsyX and the white paper, and 1Heart as well, what we want to contribute is also by creating these narratives, then to allow these people that are using psychedelics already and that are inspiring innovative leaders to come out of the closet. And by that, then you also put pressure on governments to rethink regulation, and in a very different way. It's more like a top-down kind of pressure that they would get.
And of course,
sorry.
Thank you. And I was saying, of course, that's the Thank You Plant Medicine mission as well.
Yeah.
Focus in on leaders, maybe do a special.
Yeah. And on the prediction, so I think it's definitely not a linear journey, and that's why it's very hard to do predictions. I think it's going to be some tipping point kind of thing, and I think it could actually go either way. So I think it could go like both like into something going wrong in the psychedelic ecosystem, and then also stuff also with the other things that we talked about earlier, like the holacracy and regenerative design. It could go either way, that people are going completely against it, rise of more authoritarian regimes and all of that. But it could also just like be a tipping point towards the other direction, where we have like a massive jump in consciousness, I think. And maybe also both happening in parallel at the same time. So I think it's a very complex question.
It's worth a try. I definitely see it like what you're saying of going backwards. So in Holland, for example, they didn't have restrictions so much on the ayahuasca churches, and then I think last year they passed a law against ayahuasca churches, so they cannot practice their sacrament. So it definitely can go back. So I hear you. I want to thank both of you for taking the time and bringing your energies, bringing your perspectives. Willing to be vulnerable a little bit and jamming. So I'm super grateful for you. And grateful for your work.
Thanks so much for having us.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, this is great, and thank you for the work you do. Since the moment I saw what you guys were doing, I was just excited about it. And so, it's so needed. There's no reason for there to be a stigma here, and if anything, it should be the opposite. And I love that you're putting that forward, and love to, exciting to see this movement continue and grow, and as I know it will.
Awesome. Dave, we are good. Let's see if Dave is there. Thank you so